To Chillify channel manager, asterisk. I am ready. Audio drama transcript, English translation. Alice's past life. After my sister-in-law gave birth to a grandson, our entire family insisted she breastfeed. I, Alice, stepped in to defend her, advising everyone that formula milk was just as good as breast milk. Later, my nephew, Timothy, grew up healthy, but every time he failed an exam, my sister-in-law, Lily, blamed me entirely. It's all your aunt's fault for being so nosy back then, stopping me from breastfeeding. That's why you're so stupid. Timothy harbored resentment because of this. On the day he failed his university entrance exam, he pushed me off the rooftop. Rebirth. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the very day Lily was being held down on the bed by the entire family. Seeing the desperate plea for help in her eyes, I rushed forward, grabbing the wrist of the person pinning her down. How can formula ever compare to breastfeeding? I had been reborn, arriving on the exact day Lily gave birth. Her clothes were disheveled, like a pig waiting to be butchered for Tet. My mother and my brother, Michael, had her tightly pinned to the bed. The glossy silk bedsheets were already crumpled from Lily's violent struggles. She wailed, "I don't want to breastfeed, I don't want to." My mother tightened her grip on Lily's ankle. "What's more," she scoffed, "you're a mother now, yet still so weak, you can't even handle a little hardship." Michael, with one hand, gently wiped away her tears, his voice soft. "Don't be stubborn, children can't grow up healthy without mother's milk." Lily, crying and choking, struggled and then caught sight of me standing frozen at the doorway, her eyes full of hope. "Sister-in-law, save me." Suddenly, I remembered the same scene from my previous life, her pleading gaze directed at me. Back then, I felt pity for Lily, swayed by Michael's sweet words. Unprepared physically or mentally, she had dropped out of university to have the child. As a woman, I understood the difficulties of childbirth. Breastfeeding was a personal choice, not something to be forced or moralized. Every mother had the right to choose. Therefore, in my past life, I had stood in front of Lily, using my identity as a nutrition expert to persuade Michael and my mother. Most formula milk on the market today is made from cow's milk, structured similarly to breast milk. In terms of nutritional content, there isn't much difference. Michael and my mother were half convinced, half skeptical, but they finally let Lily go. My nephew, Timothy, grew up healthy on formula. But I never imagined that once he started school, every time he performed poorly on an exam or failed to win a competition, Lily would blame me. She clearly neglected his education, yet stubbornly insisted it was my fault. My son should have gone to Tsinghua or Peking University. If you hadn't stopped me from breastfeeding him, he wouldn't have only qualified for a 211 school. On the day his university entrance exam results were announced, Timothy called me to the rooftop, claiming he had a big surprise for me. Then, taking advantage of my distraction, he pushed me off. Lily and Michael announced to outsiders that I had slipped and fallen while hanging laundry. My mother was even coerced into corroborating their story. At my funeral, some people cried as if their hearts were breaking. But once all the guests had left, they sat down to frankly discuss using my personal accident insurance money to send Timothy abroad, to cheer him up, fearing my mangled corpse would traumatize him. I, who had worked like an ox my entire life, living and dying, was never truly considered part of their family. Alice's new path and Lily's suffering. Recalling this, I rushed forward, responding to Lily's desperate plea. Amidst her bewildered gaze, I grasped her frantically flailing hand. "Only breastfed babies are smart, are they? Formula is full of artificial additives. How can it compare to mother's milk?" I waited with anticipation. How intelligent would her directly breastfed baby be this time? Lily was frail, and being forced to breastfeed placed immense physical and mental pressure on her. Her milk production was sparse and thin. My mother was displeased that her precious grandson was hungry and sought out a series of folk remedies to boost Lily's milk supply. For a while, our kitchen became a den of horrors, the sink filled with fresh placenta and bowls of wriggling earthworms. Even I felt nauseated looking at it, let alone Lily, who had to swallow these things. At first, she desperately refused, but my mother goaded Michael into being forceful. A man who can't control his wife will be mocked outside. And so, Michael locked her in a room for 3 days and 3 nights, with nothing but placenta soup to eat. When the door was opened, the bowls were clean, without a single trace left. Michael was smug, believing he knew how to teach his wife, completely oblivious to the hatred in Lily's eyes. Perhaps seeing Michael's true colors, Lily realized that Timothy was her only support. She gradually stopped resisting. Not only did she drink all of my mother's outlandish concoctions, but she also proactively ate pig trotters and carp, dishes she wouldn't have touched before. But despite her best efforts, Lily's body only grew heavier and her breasts remained flat. My mother grew impatient. Finally, she remembered me, the nutrition student, and dragged me in front of Lily, abruptly lifting her shirt. Lily was startled by the sudden action, frantically covering her chest, crying out in pain. My mother sneered, "You've already given birth, what are you pretending for? What's with the act?" Then, her eyes wide with hope, she asked me, "Sister-in-law, do you have any ideas?" I looked at the thin layer of milk at the bottom of the baby bottle on the table corner and smiled. There is a way. The baby itself is the best expert at clearing milk ducts. No food helps with milk production more than direct breastfeeding. I wasn't lying to them. Compared to pumping, direct breastfeeding stimulates the milk glands to produce much more. I just wasn't sure if Lily's fragile body could endure this hardship. The effectiveness of direct breastfeeding quickly became apparent. Soon, Lily's breasts became full and engorged, her milk flowing so profusely it almost overflowed. My mother beamed with joy. Normally, she would grudge me even half an extra egg, but now she was piling meat onto my plate at dinner. She bragged to every neighbor about her precious, one-of-a-kind grandson. But Lily found no comfort. Direct breastfeeding takes a far greater toll on a mother's body. As soon as Timothy cried, even in the middle of the night, Lily had to get up to feed him. At least 3 or 4 times every night, for an entire month, she never had a full night's sleep. During the day, she constantly yawned from sleep deprivation while coaxing her son. If the disruption of day and night was bearable, the cracked nipples from breastfeeding were enough to break any new mother. Lily asked someone to buy several foreign ointments, but my mother, fearing the medication would affect Timothy's feeding, wordlessly threw all the medicine into the trash. She then forcefully squeezed Lily's swollen, red breasts and scolded, "We suffered far more in our time. If you can't even handle this little pain, then don't be a mother." One night, I woke up and found Lily sitting alone by the window, silently weeping. Having dealt with many similar cases, I immediately recognized this as a classic sign of postpartum depression. As she stepped onto the windowsill, I quickly pulled her back. Lily finally broke down, collapsing into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Thinking of how in my previous life she had only ever faced me with schemes and manipulations, I felt a sudden thrill. I didn't pity Lily, I just didn't want her to die so easily. The story was far from over, her days of suffering had only just begun. I told my mother and Michael about Lily's attempt to jump. It was unclear if it was fear of public scandal or concern that Timothy would have no one to breastfeed him, but my mother's attitude softened considerably. Even Michael, who was usually annoyed by the baby's cries, started coming home more often. The family returned to its previous facade of warmth. The constant, day and night direct breastfeeding stimulated Lily's maternal instincts. From someone who had vehemently opposed breastfeeding, she began to boast to all her friends about its benefits. She even created a social media account to share her breastfeeding journey, declaring she would breastfeed until Timothy was grown. Her account was filled with praises for breastfeeding, never mentioning the pain, sleep deprivation, or sore breasts. Occasionally, someone would ask if it was okay to use a bottle if they were afraid to breastfeed. She would sneer, "If you can't even handle that little bit of hardship, then don't be a mother." Her words were an exact replica of my mother's. Comments on her live stream were filled with adoration. "Lily is amazing. What a great mother." Some men even tagged their wives, "Look at her." I glanced at Lily, basking in the flattery, then pulled my suitcase full of books and left the house. No hurry. Just a few more years, and she would understand the meaning of what goes around comes around. Timothy's troubled childhood. Time flew by. The next time I saw Timothy, he was 5 years old, completely different from my previous life. The boy had changed so much. A normal 5-year-old is usually only about 1.1 meters tall, but Timothy was nearly 1.5 meters, his physique far superior to his peers. My mother would take him out and proudly show him off to everyone. "My grandson is tall and strong, all thanks to breastfeeding." Only I knew that Timothy would never grow taller than 1.5 meters in this life. I glanced at the stack of supplement boxes piled in the corner. Over the years, I had sent countless nutritional foods home, Sea cucumber, bird's nest, cordyceps, all cheap knockoffs, of course. They were ostensibly for Lily's nourishment, but in reality, they all went into Timothy's stomach. I had long anticipated my mother's nature. Everything good in the house would undoubtedly be lavished on her precious grandson. But children consuming too many supplements can easily lead to endocrine disorders, severely harming their development. I patted Timothy's head, casually touching his neck. As expected, at just 5 years old, his Adam's apple was already prominent. I calmly withdrew my hand and smiled. Lily really raised him well. My mother held her head high. Of course, Lily is the greatest contributor to our Chu family. Just then, the kindergarten in the neighborhood announced something over its loudspeaker. I suddenly remembered that 5 years old was not yet first grade, but at least he should be in the senior class of kindergarten. I asked, "Mom, why isn't Timothy in school yet?" Hearing this, my mother's triumphant face immediately twisted in anger. Those snot-nosed little girls, they can teach my grandson. Handing Timothy over to them would be like looking down on my grandson. I was wondering what was going on when Timothy, who had been engrossed in his phone, suddenly looked up like a flash, grabbed my chest, and then ran downstairs, yelling, "Gold and silver are nothing compared to Grandma's big boobs." My mother, trembling, followed him downstairs, not forgetting to call out, "My precious little one, my little ancestor, slow down." Their figures gradually disappeared. I coldly adjusted my shirt, which Timothy had wrinkled. That brat. If no one in the family dares to teach you, then the outside world surely will. Alice's refusal to be exploited. At dinner, Michael, who had always looked down on me, uncharacteristically offered me a chicken drumstick. "Sister, you must be graduating from postgraduate studies soon, right? Timothy isn't going to kindergarten now. How about you help us teach him?" My mother immediately chimed in, but her tone was far from polite. "Alice, Timothy is older now. Your mother and Lily can't handle him anymore. After you finish studying, come back and lend a hand." I suddenly remembered how in my past life, my mother had secretly persuaded me that Michael and Lily were only in their early 20s, married young, and had no experience raising children. Although you haven't given birth yet, you've studied nutrition for many years, so you have some knowledge. And so, Timothy's early childhood education was almost entirely my responsibility. Back then, I thought we were all family. I gave up the opportunity to pursue a PhD, found a job in a small town, just to be near them. If not for retaining some consciousness after my death and seeing the repulsive true faces of my so-called family, I would have remained blind to their deception until my dying breath. Thinking of this, I put down my chopsticks and coldly said, "It's just kindergarten, what's so difficult about it? Timothy was breastfed by Lily and grew up well. He won't be lacking anything by not going to school. I studied nutrition. What do I know about teaching children? Besides, I'm starting a business with a friend. If I back out now, I'll lose over 100,000 in contract penalties." As soon as she heard about the penalties, my mother's face fell and she muttered, "Useless expenditures." I pretended not to hear. I blinked a few times, then delivered the final blow. I was planning to earn more money for Timothy's future wedding. Hearing this, my mother's eyes lit up and she repeatedly said, "You just focus on your work, don't worry about family matters." The incident with Mr. Chen's wife. While eating, Michael received a call, dropped his chopsticks, and rushed out. I calmly picked up a potato, about to bring it to my mouth when a knock 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 echoed from the door. My mother was rummaging through a dish, picking out the biggest piece of pig trotter for Timothy, then took the chicken drumstick from my bowl and put it in his. Only then did she get up to open the door. Standing outside were a couple. The wife looked a little older than her husband, her belly slightly protruding, about 3 or 4 months pregnant. Through the crack in the door, she saw Timothy standing on a chair, picking at food, and her expression immediately became agitated. "It's him. This is the little brat who touched my chest." The husband, Mr. Chen, looked grim, but his voice was controlled. "Hello, I'm Mr. Chen from next door. This afternoon, my wife was sunbathing in the communal area. Your son not only lifted her skirt but also touched her chest. We'd appreciate an explanation for this." My mother paused, turned to look at Timothy, who was engrossed in his food, and asked softly, "Timothy, have you seen her skirt before?" Timothy didn't look up. "No." The pregnant woman trembled with rage. "This brat dares to do it but won't admit it." Seeing her grandson deny it, my mother's confidence soared, and she loudly declared, "He's only 5 years old. Do you think he knows how to lie?" Mr. Chen didn't say much. He immediately called the building security, requesting they bring the security camera footage. The video clearly showed the pregnant woman sitting on a lounge chair when Timothy suddenly ran over, lifted her skirt, and while she was flustered trying to pull it down, he reached out and grabbed her breast before running off. With clear evidence and witnesses, no matter how much she adored her grandson, my mother couldn't deny it. She bowed her head like a rooster defeated in a fight, still muttering, "It was just a light touch, what's the big deal? She's pregnant, acting like a virgin or something." No matter how patient Mr. Chen was, he couldn't tolerate such an insult in front of his wife. He roared, "Try saying one more word." The crowd of onlookers grew, filling the doorway. Lily, hearing the commotion, yawned and stepped out. My mother whispered the whole story to her. I expected her to pull Timothy and apologize, but instead she puffed out her chest and said, "My son touching your chest means he thought highly of you. It's just breasts, everyone has them. Dressed so provocatively, who knows if you were intentionally seducing him? He touched you, did you lose a piece of flesh? Do you want my son to kneel and apologize?" She then glared at the stunned pregnant woman and spat disdainfully on the ground. "You're so old, you don't even deserve your husband. You might even have a sugar baby. That baby in your belly might not even be your husband's." I felt a chill. The woman who had been terrified of having her shirt lifted years ago was now exactly like my mother. Amidst the noisy argument, Timothy jumped off the chair, gnawing on a chicken drumstick and tugged on Lily's shirt. "Mommy, I want milk." Lily immediately changed her expression, gently coaxing him. Okay, be a good boy. Let Mommy chase these bad people away and then I'll feed you." Timothy insisted. "How much longer?" Lily looked awkwardly at the crowd. Before she could open her mouth, Timothy lunged and pushed the pregnant woman hard in the stomach. Nearly 1.5 meters tall and having eaten supplements since he was little, the boy had the strength of an adult. The pregnant woman was unexpectedly pushed, tumbled down the stairs, and lay motionless on the ground, blood beginning to seep from under her skirt. Everyone panicked, some calling for an ambulance, others rushing to help. Timothy, meanwhile, was jumping on the landing. "Promiscuous woman, serves you right for complaining." Mrs. Liu's revelations and Timothy's downfall. My neighbor, Mrs. Liu, seeing me, quickly pulled me aside, muttering about my unruly nephew. Mrs. Liu, usually chatty and enthusiastic, poured out everything that had happened over the past few years as soon as she saw me return. It turned out that a year ago, Timothy had gone to kindergarten, but was expelled in less than 3 months. The reason? He didn't know how to use the restroom by himself, insisting the teacher carry him and hold him while he urinated, or forcefully hugging little girls, even tearing their clothes. His physique was far superior to his peers. Even a slight tussle meant bruises all over anyone he pinned down. In this day and age, every child is precious. Angry parents came to our house, demanding apologies from Lily and Timothy, only to be chased out with a broom by Lily. If it had just been conflicts between children, it might have been excused. But on the school's anniversary celebration, Timothy had pulled the principal's shirt off in front of everyone, exposing the principal on stage. That was the last straw for the school. I heard that parents collectively signed a petition, refusing to let Timothy continue studying there. The school even preferred to refund the full tuition rather than take the boy back. Initially, Lily acted as if it was no big deal, saying there were plenty of other kindergartens. But after this incident, Timothy's reputation as a kindergarten devil spread far and wide. No school dared to accept him. In my previous life, under my care, Timothy wasn't overly intelligent but was a well-behaved child. When he was little, he would often hug my arm and sweetly call me, "Auntie, fall?" I truly never expected him to be raised like this in this life. But when you think about it, breastfeeding or bottle feeding doesn't significantly affect intelligence. What truly matters is parental upbringing. As the ancients said, "You reap what you sow," and it was indeed true. I was very curious to see how deeply Timothy would fall with my mother's indulgence, Lily's pampering, and Michael's neglect. Legal consequences. A few days later, Mr. Chen's family stopped coming around. My mother and Lily breathed a sigh of relief, thinking everything had blown over. But when they returned from the market, they found a thin paper stuck to the door. My illiterate mother thought it was just some random advertisement and reached out to tear it off. I quickly stopped her. "This is a court summons." The other party was suing Timothy for intentional injury and his guardians for negligent supervision, demanding 200,000 yuan in compensation. My mother couldn't believe it. She choked out, "Alice, look closely, is this summons real?" I simply pointed to the red seal, affirming it was. My mother sank to the ground as if her soul had left her body, muttering, "Just a light push and they want money? They're slandering us." It was no slander at all. The documents attached to the summons clearly stated that the couple was legally married, an on-trend, older woman-younger man relationship. The wife had both fallopian tubes blocked and had only succeeded with artificial insemination on her 5th attempt. She had rarely gotten a chance to rest during her pregnancy, and now Timothy had ruined everything. In my opinion, demanding 200,000 yuan was lenient, but even 200,000 yuan was something my family couldn't afford. My mother's pension was less than 2,000 yuan a month. Lily hadn't finished university, no company would hire her, and she was too picky to do any hard labor, having lived off Michael for years. I knew Michael's meager salary couldn't cover the compensation. Sure enough, my mother and Lily looked at me. "Alice, didn't you work part-time outside? And you just got a scholarship. Help your brother get through this difficulty. He'll pay you back when he's well off." I scoffed. "Pay me back with what? Michael only finished middle school. His current job was arranged by our father when he was alive. The wedding house was an old house renovated, and I bought the building materials. As for cement bags, I carried them up to the 7th floor myself." He, on the other hand, used back pain as an excuse to play games all day. Does he look like a father at all? My mother had pampered him his whole life and brainwashed me into believing it was my responsibility to take care of my brother's entire family. But what was the outcome? I died a miserable, incomplete death. This time, I wouldn't let them bleed me dry one drop more. Cleared my throat. "Mom, have you forgot? All my previous savings were given to Michael for his wedding, weren't they? Besides, I still have student loans to pay off, and my monthly supplement expenses aren't small either." My mother stomped her foot in anger. "You see your own brother in trouble, do you have no conscience?" Lily also wailed. "Sister Alice, that's your own nephew. Are you really going to abandon him?" I calmly took a sip of tea and replied indifferently, "Timothy has his parents." Is it my turn to worry? This sentence was like lighting a fuse. My mother, completely disregarding the dirty floor, threw herself to the ground, kicking her legs and cursing relentlessly. "Oh heavens, are you trying to kill your old mother? I raised you and sent you to school, and this is how you repay me?" In my previous life, she was the same. If I went against her wishes, she would cry lightly or roll on the ground, threatening to die. Back then, I pitied her for raising Michael and me alone, always yielding and obeying her every command. But now, I looked at her tantrum with cold detachment, feeling only disgust for Lily. She sat crumpled beside her, crying and calling out, "Mommy," repeatedly. Outsiders would have thought they were biological mother and daughter. It seemed she had completely forgotten how my mother had forced her down and made her breastfeed, force-feeding her milk-boosting soup. I distinctly remembered how in my previous life, I had protected her, helped her escape such hardship. Yet she harbored hatred for me for years and in the end, watched her son push me off a building. And now she was turning around and acting chummy with my mother. I snickered. Truly someone who couldn't tell good from bad. No wonder she chose the wrong person like Michael. A moment later, I put down my teacup and stood up. My mother thought I had come to my senses and quickly reached out, as if to offer me a way to back down. But I walked right past her, straight to the door, opening it with a bang. The old house had poor soundproofing. Her earlier wailing had already drawn the neighbors out to eavesdrop. Thinking back, in just a few days, the neighbors had witnessed 2 humiliating scenes. My mother also began to feel ashamed, quickly getting up and dusting herself off. But 200,000 yuan was no small sum. If I didn't pay, they would be forced to shamelessly borrow money, and loans had to be repaid. How could that be easier than extracting money from me? My mother gritted her teeth, resolutely letting the neighbors be the judge. Our family isn't without reason. Timothy pushing the pregnant woman and the compensation are correct. But I worked so hard to raise Alice for so many years and even sent her to university, and now she's so heartless. People say an elder sister is like a mother. My brother is in trouble and she's abandoning her responsibility. What do you all think? I almost burst out laughing. It was the state that paid for my university education. How did that become her credit? Before I could even open my mouth, an upright neighbor spoke up. "Sister Chu, that's not right. We watched Alice grow up from childhood. You disciplined her quite a bit. I remember in the bitter cold of winter, you didn't buy her warm clothes, so I had to give her my daughter-in-law's old coat to wear." That's right. I also heard Alice didn't spend a dime of her family's money for university and often sent gifts back to her sister-in-law. Besides, only when parents are dead is an elder sister called like a mother. Why are you cursing yourself, Sister Chu? My mother stood at the door, surrounded by neighbors, being assailed with questions. Her face was pale, her usually sharp tongue now stiff as fried dough, unable to say a word. Lily held her hand, also at a loss. The disappearance and new name. Suddenly, the crowd stirred. Michael appeared from somewhere, leading Timothy. I was startled. I hadn't seen Timothy for days. Turns out Michael had taken him into hiding. Timothy's face was arrogant, completely devoid of childlike innocence. He lunged into Lily's arms, kneading her breasts. Their bodies clung tightly together, their heights now similar. From a distance, they looked more like lovers than mother and child. "Mommy, I missed you so much. I'm dying for milk. I haven't had any in days." Hearing her son, Lily quickly pulled him inside. Before going, she didn't forget to glance at me. Some people really have eyes like dogs, looking down on others. Our child is precious. He can't be associated with such low-class people. I clutched my chest, trying to swallow down the nausea. Michael approached, throwing a bank card directly at my face. "Calling you sister is out of respect. Don't think you're so important." Then he turned to help my mother. "Don't worry about the money, Mom, 200,000 yuan is nothing, I can handle it." Seeing her son so confident, my mother beamed with joy, her previously slumped posture immediately straightening. Indeed, a true son of the Chu family, so capable. My mother then shot me a sharp, contemptuous glance. "Raising you is worse than raising a dog. From now on, I won't consider you my daughter anymore." She then went inside, rummaged around, and threw the household registration booklet onto the floor. "Move your household registration out of this house. I feel unlucky keeping you here." My heart rejoiced as if it were a festival. Excellent, I couldn't have asked for more, I thought, fearing she might change her mind. The very next day, I took the booklet to complete the household registration transfer and also changed my name to Charlotte Chu. The name, Alice, Fande, had been a curse, clinging to me for over 20 years, as if I was born only to fulfill others' desire for a son. My heart was tired. From now on, I would live for myself. A woman, too, can brave the waves and break through storms. Charlotte's new life and Timothy's continued downfall. After years of studying and working, I saved a little money, borrowed some from my best friend Susie, and bought my first small apartment. Though modest in size, it was warm and immaculate, with a south-facing bedroom where sunlight streamed onto the windowsill every morning, no longer the suffocating small room of before. On the day I graduated with my PhD, I invited Susie over for hot pot. Susie, a primary school teacher, had just become a homeroom teacher and was swamped. While eating, she sighed, "You wouldn't believe how difficult it is to manage students nowadays. Parents are getting more and more unreasonable, like this new transfer student in my class. What was his name again? Oh, right, Timothy. He used to go to a private school, but was expelled for repeatedly sneaking into the girls' restroom to peep. That's why he transferred to our public school. His mother even came to school to cause trouble, saying it was the school's fault for not carefully closing the restroom doors and for unclear signs, which made her son, accidentally, go into the wrong one." I paused, putting down a piece of watermelon, and quietly asked, "Is his mother's name Lily?" Susie was surprised. "How did you know?" I gave a bitter, helpless laugh. "Timothy is my nephew." Susie's jaw dropped, probably completely unable to imagine that I was related to such a peculiar mother and son. Seeing my curiosity, she began to babble about Timothy's recent situation. The boy had barely attended kindergarten, having been wildly educated by Lily and Michael, so he knew nothing about classroom etiquette. He didn't know to raise his hand to ask to use the restroom. During class, he treated discipline like a breeze, constantly looking around and cheating on tests. His memory was extremely poor. Other children had already mastered pinyin and the alphabet, but he was still recognizing ABCs. Lily was no less troublesome. In less than half a semester, she had met with the teacher 7 or 8 times. She questioned why the teacher only admonished Timothy and not other students, then blamed the teacher for favoritism, saying, "Why do those other children have commendation certificates but my son doesn't?" The teacher, with good intentions, suggested she pay more attention to her son's studies, subtly hinting that the boy was significantly lagging behind. But Lily was dismissive. "He's a boy, he'll only develop in high school. The teacher is worrying too much, meddling in things that don't concern her." Susie grew angrier as she spoke, slamming her hand on the table, spilling half a can of coca. I quickly soothed her and quietly offered a plan. Commendation certificates are simple. Just invent some reasons and give him a few improvement or encouragement certificates. As for the cheating, just pretend not to see it. It doesn't matter. His mother even told you not to interfere. Why bother being overly responsible? Many parents think teachers are omnipotent, but don't understand that parents are a child's first and best teachers. Lily was proud that her son was breastfed and thus smart and lively, unaware that Timothy, lacking proper guidance, was spiraling down a distorted path. Timothy's downfall continues. I never expected to encounter Timothy again at a middle school. At that time, I, an associate professor of nutritional science at Nanda University, was invited to give a lecture at Longhua Middle School. After the lecture, as I was packing my belongings, a short, stocky male student called out to me, "Teacher!" The boy was less than 1.5 meters tall but weighed almost 100 kg. I couldn't believe my eyes and tentatively called out, "Timothy." The older Timothy grew, the less he spoke. I asked, "Do you have a question for me?" He nodded and said, "Let's go to the office." On the way, he kept his head down in silence. In contrast, several students passing by whispered and pointed. In the empty office, I closed the door and, seeing his difficult expression, asked, "Is there something you want to talk about?" He hesitated, then began, "Earlier in your lecture, you said boys usually go through secondary sexual development between 10 and 14 years old. I have a friend who started developing at 5 and is now not even 1.5 meters tall. Will he not grow any taller?" I replied, "Early development leads to early cessation of growth. If not treated in time, it's indeed very difficult to grow taller." Timothy bit his lip tightly, his eyes red. He clenched his fists but didn't let the tears fall, simply saying, "Thank you, teacher," and turning to leave. "What friend?" I suddenly remembered his face from long ago when he hugged me and called out, "Auntie, fall," offering me his only candy. Then his twisted face flashed into my mind, pushing me off the rooftop and screaming, "Go die." These two images overlapped and my heart sank. Humans are inherently contradictory. Well, consider it helping him one last time. After that, fate takes its course. I called him back. "Timothy, don't eat those supplements at home anymore. Children who eat too many supplements are prone to premature puberty. If you get it checked early, there might still be hope." As he left the room, he bumped into the English teacher. She leaned close to me conspiratorially. "Do you know that boy?" I asked in return. "Why were those students pointing earlier?" The teacher replied, "Someone said they saw him outside the alley, breastfeeding from his mother. He's 15 or 16 and still hasn't been weaned." This news spread very quickly. Now almost everyone in school knows. Some call him "mommy's boy," others call him a little pervert. It's not exactly bullying, but this kind of situation is even harder to handle. Lily's public outburst and assault. Not long after, Susie called me in a panic. "Something big has happened." I quickly followed Susie to Longhua Middle School. Lily was holding a small notebook, yelling at the top of her lungs. "Ms. Wang Zhaijiao, come out here. Are you still fit to be a teacher if you're seducing students?" Susie had mentioned Ms. Wang Zhaijiao before, a former leader who had helped Susie a lot, which explained why she was so anxious. Accusing someone of violating teaching ethics was no small matter. The crowd of onlookers grew larger and larger. Lily cursed more and more fiercely, even reading aloud from the notebook in front of the vice principal. He stroked my chest with his soft, white hands and whispered in my ear, "I love you." I suddenly guessed that this was probably Timothy's diary. It's normal for a teenage boy to develop feelings for the opposite sex, but Timothy was different. From a young age, Lily had breastfed him until he was grown, an excessive attachment to his mother that made him completely unable to interact normally with females. From touching breasts and lifting skirts as a child to secretly entering girls' restrooms in elementary school, his affections, which should have been directed towards peers, had shifted to adult women. Timothy's curiosity and desire for the opposite sex, under Lily's influence, had developed into a pathological mother-love syndrome. How pitiful and how regrettable. Perhaps fearing the matter would escalate, the principal immediately dismissed Ms. Wang from her art class and called her out. On the way, the principal must have briefed her on everything, but seeing how ridiculously unbelievable the situation was, Ms. Wang didn't waste words. She handed her phone directly to the principal. If you find any suspicious photos or chat logs, I will immediately resign and leave the education field. Lily snatched the phone. Forget photos, I'll even check food orders in detail. After a long search, she finally realized that Timothy and Ms. Wang had not even friended each other on WeChat. By this point, Lily had lost all face. All her efforts to cause trouble had ended up as a misunderstanding, and she had read her son's fictional diary aloud in front of everyone. If she had genuinely apologized, this matter might have been overlooked, but Lily stubbornly argued, insisting that Ms. Wang must have taken advantage of recess to seduce her son. Ms. Wang was furious. Ignoring the principal and disciplinary teachers, she resolutely called the police. As the police were on their way, Lily still wouldn't stop. She lunged at me, intending to hit me. Luckily, Susie reacted faster, blocking me and taking the full force of a slap. Even as the disciplinary teachers pulled her away, Lily screamed, "Your own mother disowned you, so why are you meddling in my family's business? It's all your damn lecture's fault. Timothy won't eat the sea cucumber I cooked. He won't even breastfeed anymore. You're single because you're desperate and couldn't get a husband, right? Are you jealous because I'm younger than you and had a child?" I painfully rubbed Susie's swollen, red cheek and looked at Lily with eyes completely devoid of warmth. "Lily, you carry the name of a virtuous mother, but everything Timothy has become today is your fault. And even if, for a moment, he genuinely liked the teacher, that's his private matter. You have no right to expose it publicly." Hearing this, Lily glared at me. "Who do you think you are to lecture me? My son, am I not allowed to control him?" I shook my head. From forcing your son to breastfeed until he was 16 to taking care of him from A to Z, controlling everything, these are all manifestations of twisted, possessive psychology. Buddha taught not to interfere with others' karma. Everyone has their own destiny. I will let things take their course. Susie had endured considerable hardship teaching Timothy, and now she had taken a painful slap. Of course, she couldn't forgive this. Lily was given an administrative penalty, detained for 15 days for disturbing the peace and assault. Coincidentally, this was also when Timothy's middle school entrance exam results were announced. Lily had just been released from the police station, expecting good news of her son getting into a top school, but the results were nearly 100 points below the standard for a prestigious school. She flipped the notification paper over and over, as if trying to discern something from the thin sheet. No way, the teacher must have misgraded it. Timothy, who had followed her to school, calmly held her hand. "Mom, don't go anymore. The results aren't wrong." "How can that be?" "Did you fill in the wrong answer sheet, or did you fall asleep during the exam?" "I just don't want to go to school anymore." At that time, I was having tea at Mrs. Liu's house next door. Hearing that, my heart was filled with 100 different sorrows. I knew exactly why he hated school. After Lily's rampage at school bullying had gotten even worse, but no one dared to step forward for fear of trouble. An entire education system had been angered by Lily. Outwardly, no one said anything, but inwardly, they tacitly agreed to stay away. Teachers only interacted with him during class. Outside of class, everyone ignored the boy. Even if he just wanted to ask about homework, he would be politely refused. Slowly, he no longer wanted to study, but Lily would never understand this. From childhood to adulthood, whenever Timothy encountered a problem, she always blamed the teachers, classmates, other parents, or even the weather, never once looking at herself. Michael's secrets and the final judgment. Indeed, hearing her son say he didn't want to go to school anymore, Lily paused for only a second before shouting, "Have you grown wings now? Not listening anymore? If you don't go to school, what do you plan to do? Do you want to be like your father, cooped up at home playing games all day?" I was engrossed in listening when a loud crash from next door startled me. "What are you arguing about all the time? Yelling every single day. Aren't you tired?" It was Michael's voice. I was puzzled. Why was he home at this hour? Then another sound, like something being thrown heavily onto the floor. "No wonder you haven't touched me in years. Turns out you've been secretly watching those scantily clad live streamers. Stop talking nonsense. I watch decent things. Look at yourself, fat and messy like a pig, who wouldn't be disgusted. How dare you say that? As soon as you come home, you're glued to your games, you never pay attention to our child. I think you don't want to keep this home anymore." I suddenly remembered the last time I saw Lily. She had indeed gained a lot of weight, perhaps from having to eat many supplements to maintain her milk supply. The yelling inside the house had now turned into a fight. I quickly stood up to say goodbye to Mrs. Liu next door and head home. But as I stepped out the door, I saw Timothy sitting on the doorstep. He looked up at me, tears welling in his eyes, muttering a few words as if apologizing. I didn't know if he was apologizing to me or to himself, but it no longer mattered now. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw a court car parked in front of the house. Curious, and wanting to witness the end of the two evil individuals firsthand, I approached the enforcement officers and identified myself. To my surprise, the police had two summons. One was to prosecute Lily for defamation and disturbing public order. The other was to prosecute Michael for embezzlement and misappropriation of public funds. I suddenly understood. The 200,000 yuan Michael had withdrawn years ago to pay compensation wasn't from his own capability, but from stolen money. After 2 months of trial, the People's Court rendered the following verdict. Lily, defamation, 2 years in prison, disturbing public order, 1 year and 6 months. Total combined sentence, 3 years in prison. Michael, misappropriation of public funds, 13 years in prison, recovery of illegal gains, 6.9 million yuan. Embezzlement, 15 years in prison, recovery of illegal gains, 1.3 million yuan. Total combined sentence, 23 years in prison. Total recovery, 8.2 million yuan. It was worth noting that most of that money had been used for his and Lily's joint living expenses, so even if she divorced after her release, she would still have to help repay the debt. The aftermath. About a month after Lily was incarcerated, I visited her in prison once, bringing 2 documents: Timothy's cremation certificate and my mother's psychiatric hospital admission papers. After both Lily and Michael were arrested, Timothy completely collapsed. It wasn't until the police couldn't reach his parents and called my number that I learned that 2 weeks prior, Timothy had drowned himself in the river. He died decisively, tying his legs, filling his pockets with rocks, and plunging into the water. On the bank, he left a suicide note with only one sentence: "In the next life, please don't be my mother again." My mother fainted on the spot when she heard her grandson was dead. When she regained consciousness, she didn't recognize anyone anymore, only remembering she had a grandson. The director of the psychiatric hospital told me that every day she would ask strangers, "Have you seen my grandson? His name is Timothy, tall, handsome, a student at Tsinghua University." I sighed and instructed the director, "Please take good care of my mother, doctor. I will send the hospital fees on time every month." After all, we were mother and child for one lifetime. Whether it's awakening or debt, it's fate. Lily, however, did not accept her fate so easily. She had been orphaned young. Although my mother hadn't been very kind to her when she first married into the family, she had been truly sincere towards Timothy. Thus, Lily had always regarded my mother as a half-mother. Now, her beloved son of over a decade had suddenly died, leaving behind a dying wish: "In the next life, please don't be my mother again." And her mother-in-law, her last remaining family, had gone mad. Lily couldn't accept this shock. In the visiting room, she screamed wildly, then suddenly lunged forward, grabbing the iron bars, and yelled at me, "It's all your fault. If you hadn't interfered, my family wouldn't have ended up like this." I laughed coldly. "Reborn for a lifetime, and you still haven't shed your habit of blaming others. You're even worse than a child." I uttered a final sentence, "You reap what you sow," and turned to leave the visiting room. Outside, the sun was blazing, another beautiful day.